Have you ever felt like you're constantly running on empty? Like no matter how hard you try to protect yourself, to guard your heart, to avoid being hurt, you still end up feeling exhausted at the end of each day. You've tried to hide it. You've put on a brave face. You've smiled when you wanted to cry. You've nodded when you wanted to scream. You've tried to be strong, tried to pretend to be normal. But deep inside, there's this quiet ache that never seems to go away. And you wonder, why do you always feel so empty? Perhaps it's because you're spending all your energy running away from something that's actually trying to guide you. In our desperate attempt to avoid pain, we often create more of it. The walls you build to protect yourself become the very prison that keeps you from truly living. Maybe it's not about becoming stronger or more resilient. Maybe it's not about learning how to care less or feel less. Maybe it's because you don't need to run away from pain. You just need to stop fighting yourself. Carl Jung wrote, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain." He understood something profound about human suffering. Our greatest battle isn't with the world outside, but with the world within. Today, I want to show you why everything changes when you stop running from your pain and start listening to what it's trying to tell you. This isn't just another video about positive thinking or quick fixes. This is about the courage to look beneath the surface, to face what you've been avoiding, and to discover the freedom that waits on the other side of your fear. Because as Jung said, who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakes. And today, I invite you to awaken. There's a beautiful paradox at the heart of emotional freedom. The more you try to control how others treat you, the more you actually give away your power. The more desperately you try to avoid being hurt, the more vulnerable you become to the very thing you fear. You can't control the world, but you can make peace with yourself. But Jung invites us to look deeper. He said, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. What truly hurts isn't what happens to us, but what these experiences activate within us. It's not other people who hurt you. It's the story you tell yourself that hurts you. When someone's words cut deep, it's because they've touched an unhealed wound inside you. A belief about yourself that you've carried since childhood. A fear that's been living in your shadow. A part of yourself you've been running from. This is what Jung meant when he wrote, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." Those disowned parts of ourselves that we push into the shadows don't disappear just because we turn away from them. They grow, they intensify, they find ways to make themselves known. And this is why no amount of external protection can truly shield you. As long as these wounds remain unacknowledged within you, the world will continue to find ways to touch them. You've been told that strength means not letting things affect you, that being untouchable means building impenetrable walls. But true strength isn't about becoming numb or disconnected. It's about becoming whole. Jung understood that integration, not isolation, is the path to real emotional freedom. Integration means bringing all parts of yourself, the light and the dark, the beautiful and the broken, into conscious awareness. Because when you make conscious what has been unconscious, when you shine light on what has been hidden in shadow, it no longer has the power to control you from below the surface. The hurt out there is always there. Words, rejection, betrayal. But what hurts you the most is always the wound inside. Consider for a moment what happens when you're criticized. If the criticism touches a part of yourself that you've already accepted and made peace with, it may sting momentarily, but it doesn't devastate you. But if it touches a doubt you've been carrying, a fear you've been hiding from, a belief about your unworthiness that you've never faced, then it can feel like someone has reached inside and ripped you apart. The difference isn't in the words spoken. It's in what those words touch within you. Jung wrote, The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. And part of that acceptance is acknowledging the wounds you carry, the beliefs you've internalized, the pain you've been running from. But here is where true healing begins. When you start to realize that what hurts you isn't the world outside, but the unacknowledged world within. You take back your power. You begin to see that no one, not a partner, not a friend, not a stranger, has the power to destroy you unless you've already been doing that work yourself. If this message resonates with something deep within you, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Let's continue this journey together. From the moment you were young, you were taught how to be acceptable to the world. Don't cry too much. Don't feel too deeply. Don't show vulnerability. Be strong. Be resilient. Push through. Move on. And so you learn to silence your tears, to swallow your pain, to hide your wounds. You became an expert at looking fine when you were breaking inside, at smiling through the storm, at pretending the cuts didn't bleed. But ignoring pain doesn't make you immune, it just hardens you. Jung warned us about this when he said, "Neurosis is always a substitute for legitimate suffering." Pain doesn't simply evaporate when we refuse to acknowledge it. It doesn't dissolve when we distract ourselves from it. It doesn't heal when we deny its existence. Instead, it goes underground. It burrows deeper. It finds new channels through which to express itself. Ignored pain does not heal. It transforms into hidden patterns controlling your life. That unexplainable anxiety that grips you in moments of peace. That sudden rage that erupts over minor frustrations. That persistent emptiness that no achievement or relationship seems to fill. That restlessness that drives you to constantly seek something new. That exhaustion that no amount of rest seems to cure. These are not random experiences. They are the language of unprocessed pain. They are the ways your psyche tries to get your attention when you've been ignoring its cries for too long. Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." The suffering that comes not from being wounded, but from refusing to tend to our wounds, from pretending we're not hurt when we are, from denying parts of ourselves that desperately need our attention. Think about how you treat physical pain. When you cut your finger, you don't ignore it and hope it goes away. You don't shame yourself for bleeding. You clean the wound, you bandage it, you give it what it needs to heal. Yet with emotional pain, we do the opposite. We hide it, we deny it, we shame ourselves for feeling it. We push it down deeper, hoping that if we can't see it, it can't hurt us. But as Jung understood, what you resist persists. What you accept transforms. What we deny defines us. What we refuse to face faces us in ways we cannot control. The anxiety that keeps you awake at night, the relationships that mysteriously follow the same painful patterns, the success that somehow never feels like enough. These are not separate from your unaddressed pain. They are its direct consequences. Jung observed that depression is like a woman in black. If she shows up, don't shoo her away. Invite her in, give her a seat, and find out what she wants. This is true for all our difficult emotions. They come bearing messages, insights, warnings. When we refuse to listen, they don't leave. They just change their approach. The first step toward true healing is recognizing that your pain is not your enemy. It is not a sign of weakness or failure. It is a messenger trying desperately to bring your attention to what needs to be healed within you. And this messenger won't stop until it's heard. It will keep knocking, louder and louder, in whatever way it needs to, until you finally open the door and listen to what it has to say. If you've ever felt this tension between what you show the world and what you carry inside, leave a comment saying, "I'm ready to listen to my pain." Your courage might inspire someone else on their journey. What would happen if, just for a moment, you stopped running? If you turned to face what you've been fleeing from all this time? It requires immense courage to stand still when everything in you wants to escape, to stay present when discomfort rises, to listen when your pain finally has the chance to speak. Only when you stop and listen can you begin to transform. This is what Jung meant when he said, "There is no birth of consciousness without pain." It's the process of bringing awareness to what has been operating in the shadows of your psyche, of illuminating the dark corners where your unprocessed emotions have been gathering strength. But how do you begin this process? It starts with a simple yet profound shift, from avoidance to presence, from rejection to acceptance, from judgment to curiosity. The next time you feel that familiar ache, that heaviness in your chest, that tightness in your throat, pause, take a breath, and instead of immediately reaching for distraction or comfort, simply stay with the feeling. Ask it, "What are you trying to tell me? What do you need me to know?" This isn't about analyzing or figuring out. It's about listening, about creating space for your emotions to exist without immediately trying to fix or change them. Allow yourself to feel sadness, anger, disappointment. These emotions aren't your enemies. They're parts of your experience that have been waiting to be acknowledged. Jung wrote, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." Waiting to be held with compassion rather than pushed away in fear. Feeling is not falling. It's the first step to becoming whole. Jung understood that our emotions carry wisdom, that our pain contains information vital to our growth and healing. In all chaos, there is a cosmos. In all disorder, a secret order, he said. When we silence these messengers, we miss the guidance they offer. We lose the opportunity to learn what our suffering is trying to teach us. Think of a child who is crying out for attention. If ignored, the child doesn't stop needing what they need. They simply cry louder, or eventually they stop believing anyone will ever respond. Our emotions work the same way. When we continually dismiss them, they either escalate or go silent. But the underlying need remains unmet. This is why the journey toward wholeness isn't about becoming someone who never feels pain. It's about becoming someone who can be with pain without being consumed by it. Who can listen to what it has to say without being overwhelmed by its voice? Jung wrote, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls. We distract ourselves with busyness, with substances, with endless scrolling, with work, with achievement, with perfectionism. Anything to avoid feeling, anything to avoid facing what waits for us in the stillness. But it is precisely in that stillness, in that willingness to be present with what is, that healing begins. It's where we discover that the monsters we've been running from aren't as terrifying as we imagined, that the emotions we feared would destroy us can actually be held, that the parts of ourselves we've rejected are precisely the parts that need our compassion the most. Imagine sitting with your pain as you would sit with a frightened child. You wouldn't scold the child for being afraid. You wouldn't tell them to just get over it or look on the bright side. You would listen. You would create a safe space. You would offer compassion and understanding. This is how we begin to heal the wounded parts of ourselves, not through force or fixing, but through presence and acceptance. Jung believed that the psyche naturally moves toward wholeness, toward what he called individuation. But it can only do so when we stop interfering with the process through our attempts to control, suppress, or deny our experience. The fundament of all mental illness, Jung wrote, is the unwillingness to experience legitimate suffering. When we refuse to feel our pain, When we run from it or repress it, we interrupt the psyche's natural healing process. We create a backlog of unprocessed emotions that grow more toxic over time. But when we allow ourselves to feel, to grieve, to rage, to despair, fully and without judgment, something remarkable happens. The emotions move. They shift. They transform. Not because we forced them to, but because we finally allowed them to complete their natural cycle. As you practice this presence, something remarkable begins to happen. The emotions that once felt too big to bear start to shift and move. They no longer hold the same power over you. Not because you've pushed them away, but because you've finally given them the space they needed to be processed and integrated. Jung called this process individuation. The journey of becoming who you truly are by integrating all aspects of yourself, including those you've been afraid to face. Wholeness is not achieved by cutting off a portion of one's being, he wrote, but by integration of the contraries. It's not a linear path. There will be days when it feels like you're moving backward, when old patterns resurface, when the acute pain feels as fresh as it ever did. This isn't failure. It's part of the spiral nature of deep healing. Each time you revisit an old wound with new awareness, you have the opportunity to respond differently, to bring more compassion, to see with greater clarity. And gradually, the parts of yourself that you once rejected or feared begin to transform. Not because you've conquered them or eliminated them, but because you've welcomed them home. In his work with patience, Jung observed that the acceptance of oneself is the essence of the whole moral problem and the epitome of a whole outlook on life. This acceptance doesn't mean resignation or defeat. It means a kind of radical honesty, a willingness to see yourself clearly with all your contradictions and complexities and to make peace with what you see. It's in this acceptance that true transformation becomes possible. Not the superficial change that comes from forcing yourself to be different, but the profound shift that occurs when you allow yourself to be exactly as you are. And in that allowing, discover that you are already enough. Take a moment to breathe deeply. Feel whatever's present for you right now. If this resonates, share this video with someone who might need this message today. There's a profound paradox at the heart of emotional freedom. The very pain you've been running from holds the key to your liberation. The darkness you've been afraid to face contains the light you've been seeking. Facing the pain, regenerating yourself, Jung wrote, "No tree, it is said, can grow to heaven unless its roots reach down to hell." When you begin to approach your suffering with curiosity rather than fear, something shifts. The monster under the bed that has terrorized you for so long begins to look different in the light of consciousness. What once seemed unbearable becomes a gateway to deeper understanding. When you have the courage to face it, the darkness is no longer scary. This is what Jung meant when he said, "Everyone carries a shadow, and the less it is embodied in the individual's conscious life, the blacker and denser it is." Our shadow isn't just composed of our negative qualities. It contains all the parts of ourselves we've disowned or rejected. The vulnerability we were told to hide. The sensitivity that was labeled as weakness. The anger we were taught was unacceptable. The grief we never allowed ourselves to fully feel. The shadow also contains our unlived potential, our untapped gifts, our unexpressed creativity. Jung observed that in each of us there is another whom we do not know. This unknown other isn't just our darkness. It's also our depth, our creativity, our capacity for joy and connection and meaning. When we begin to reclaim these disowned parts, we discover that they carry not only our pain, but also our power, our creativity, our depth, our authenticity. Consider this. The sensitivity that made you feel too much, that seemed like a burden, might actually be the source of your empathy, your intuition, your ability to connect deeply with others. The vulnerability that you were taught to hide might be the gateway to your most authentic connections. The anger you were told to suppress might contain your passion, your boundaries, your clarity about what matters to you. You understand that no one can hurt you more than self-denial. Think about how much energy it takes to constantly monitor yourself, to filter your words, to control your facial expressions, to manage how others perceive you, to maintain the walls that keep parts of yourself hidden, even from your own awareness. This self-denial is a form of violence against your own nature. It fragments you, it exhausts you, it keeps you perpetually at war with yourself. Jung wrote, "The foundation of all mental illness is the unwillingness to experience legitimate suffering. When we deny our pain, when we refuse to feel what needs to be felt, we don't just suffer unnecessarily. We cut ourselves off from the very experiences that would lead to our healing and growth." But when you begin the journey of integration, of bringing all parts of yourself into conscious relationship, that war begins to cease. The energy that once went into hiding and controlling now becomes available for living and creating. You become untouchable, not by hiding your wounds, but by embracing them. This doesn't mean you won't ever be hurt again. It means that external circumstances no longer have the power to shatter you. When someone's words touch an old wound, you recognize what's happening. You can respond from awareness rather than react from the triggered pain. You begin to understand that most of what hurts you isn't actually about you. It's about the other person's unhealed wounds, their projections, their limitations. And this understanding creates a buffer of compassion, both for yourself and for them. Jung wrote, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." When you've done the inner work, you recognize that the person who triggers you is often showing you a part of yourself that you have yet to fully integrate. Their actions or words wouldn't have the power to hurt you if they didn't touch something unresolved within you. This is what Jung meant by the wounded healer. He wrote, "Only the wounded physician heals." Our wounds, once acknowledged and tended to, become the very source of our deepest wisdom and compassion. They become the ground from which we can truly meet others in their suffering, without needing to fix or change them. Jung explained, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. When you've done the work of integrating your own wounds, your presence becomes a catalyst for others to do the same. Not because you're trying to change them, but because you're modeling what it means to be authentically human. You don't need to be strong anymore. You just need to be yourself fully." The irony is that in embracing your vulnerability, you discover a strength far greater than any armor could provide. In acknowledging your humanity, your capacity for pain, for mistake, for failure, you find a resilience that comes not from hardening, but from deepening. Jung said, "I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become." When you no longer reject any part of your experience, when you create space for all of your emotions to be felt and expressed, you become like water, able to flow with life's challenges rather than break against them. This is the essence of psychological resilience, not the ability to avoid or overcome challenges, but the capacity to move through them with awareness and flexibility, to bend without breaking, to flow rather than freeze or fragment. Jung observed that the word happiness would lose its meaning if it were not balanced by sadness. When we accept the full spectrum of human experience, when we stop trying to limit ourselves to only the positive or comfortable emotions, we discover a kind of fulfillment that goes beyond temporary happiness. We discover meaning, depth, authenticity. You still feel deeply. You still care deeply, but you're no longer at the mercy of every emotional wave. You've developed the capacity to be with whatever arises, to learn from it, to let it move through you rather than define you. And in this space of wholeness, you discover that what you've been seeking all along wasn't the absence of pain, but the presence of something much more profound, the experience of being fully alive, fully human, fully yourself. If something in this message has touched a deeper truth within you, subscribe to join our community of people committed to authentic healing and growth. As you venture deeper into this journey of integration, of making peace with all parts of yourself, you may notice something unexpected. The landscape of your relationships begins to shift. People who were drawn to your masks may become uncomfortable with your authenticity. Those who benefited from your people-pleasing patterns may resist your newfound boundaries. Friends who knew only your carefully curated self may not recognize the whole person emerging. Not everyone will accompany you on this journey. This can be one of the most painful aspects of growth. The loneliness that sometimes comes with becoming more fully yourself. The spaces that open up as certain relationships fall away. The discomfort of no longer fitting neatly into the roles others have assigned to you. Jung understood this. He said, "The shoe that fits one person pinches another." There is no recipe for living that suits all cases. Individuation, the process of becoming who you truly are, often requires walking a path that others cannot or will not walk with you. Your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Jung wrote, "Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakes." But awakening often comes with a price. Yet it is in that loneliness that you find your truest self. In the quiet spaces between old relationships and new ones, in the gap between who you were and who you are becoming, you discover aspects of yourself that can only emerge in solitude. You develop an inner authority that doesn't depend on external validation. You learn to trust the guidance of your own soul. Jung believed loneliness does not come from having no people around, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to oneself. As you become more authentic, you may find that there are fewer people with whom you can share your deepest truth, but the connections that remain, or the new ones that form, will be rooted in something far more profound than the superficial bonds that once sustained you. This doesn't mean you'll always be alone. On the contrary, as you become more authentic, you naturally attract relationships that can meet you at your new depth. People who are walking their own paths of consciousness, who value truth over comfort, who can hold space for all of who you are. But these new connections are different. They're not based on mutual masks or shared wounding. They're founded on mutual recognition of each other's wholeness, on respect for each other's journey, on the understanding that true intimacy comes not from merging or losing yourself in another, but from meeting each other as sovereign beings. Jung wrote, "The greatest tragedy of the family is the unlived lives of the parents." When you commit to your own wholeness, to your own healing, you break the cycles of unconsciousness that may have been passed down through generations in your family. You create the possibility for more authentic relationships, not just with your peers, but with those who came before you and those who will come after. This is why the work of individuation is never just personal. It ripples outward, affecting all your relationships, all your interactions. As Jung said, "The salvation of the world consists in the salvation of the individual soul." By healing yourself, by becoming whole, you contribute to the healing of the collective. True, freedom is not the absence of pain, it's living with clarity. Nothing controls you anymore. When you've faced your own darkness, when you've learned to listen to your pain rather than run from it, when you've gathered all the fragmented parts of yourself back into wholeness, you develop a kind of inner sovereignty that nothing external can shake. Jung put it beautifully when he said, "I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become." Criticism may still sting, but it no longer defines you. Rejection may still hurt, but it no longer destroys you. Loss may still grieve you, but it no longer shatters you, because you know who you are. You've seen all of yourself, the light and the shadow, and you've made peace with what you've seen. You're no longer hiding from yourself, so you no longer need to hide from the world. This is what Jung meant by consciousness as protection. As far as we can discern, the sole purpose of human existence is to kindle a light in the darkness of mere being, he wrote. It's not that conscious people don't experience difficulty or pain. It's that they experience these things differently. With awareness, with context, with the ability to learn and grow, rather than simply react and repeat. They understand that challenges aren't punishments, but invitations. That triggers aren't attacks, but information. That emotions aren't enemies, but messengers. And in this understanding lies a profound freedom. Not freedom from life's difficulties, but freedom within them. The freedom to respond rather than react, to choose rather than compulsively repeat, to create rather than merely survive. Jung wrote, "Knowing your own darkness is the best method for dealing with the darknesses of other people. When you've faced your own shadow, you can meet others in their darkness without fear, without judgment, without the need to fix or change them. You can offer the greatest gift, the space to be exactly as they are, with compassion and understanding. This is why conscious people often become catalysts for healing in their communities. Not because they're trying to change anyone, but because their presence, their groundedness, their authenticity, their wholeness creates a field that invites others to drop their pretenses as well. This is the gift waiting on the other side of the pain you've been running from. This is the transformation that begins when you finally turn to face what you've been fleeing. If you feel called to walk this path of wholeness, even when it's difficult, even when it's lonely, hit the like button. Let's remind each other that we're not alone in this journey. We've come to the end of our journey together today. But in many ways, this is just the beginning of a new relationship with yourself, with your pain, with your wholeness. The question now is, what will you do with what you've heard? You can continue to avoid, to run from discomfort, to hide behind masks, to silence the voice of your suffering. No one would blame you. It's what most of us have been taught to do. Or today you can choose to let go of the pretense. You can take that first courageous step toward yourself, toward integration, toward freedom. It won't be easy. There will be moments when the pain feels too much to bear, when the loneliness of the path overwhelms you, when you're tempted to go back to sleep, to forget what you've glimpsed, to return to the familiar comfort of numbness. But there will also be moments of such profound clarity, such exquisite aliveness, that you'll wonder how you ever lived any other way. Moments when you feel so whole, so present, so deeply yourself that nothing external can touch the core of who you are. Jung reminds us, the meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. Today, you begin the most important meeting of your life. The meeting with yourself. This meeting isn't a one-time event, but an ongoing relationship. A daily choice to show up for yourself, to listen to your pain, to honor your truth, to welcome home the parts of yourself you've been running from. As Jung wrote, there can be no transforming of darkness into light and of apathy into movement without emotion. Allow yourself to feel. Allow yourself to be moved. Allow the emotions you've been avoiding to finally have their say. Because it's only in this allowing, this radical acceptance of all that you are, that true transformation becomes possible. Not the superficial change that comes from forcing yourself to be different, but the profound shift that occurs when you create the conditions for your authentic self to emerge. Today, you can choose to become whole, to stop running from your pain and start listening to what it has to teach you, to gather all the fragmented parts of yourself back into consciousness, to live with an awareness that transforms not just your suffering, but your entire relationship with life. In the words of Jung, your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakes. If you're ready to live authentically, right, I choose to feel and be whole. And remember, this path isn't meant to be walked alone. Share this video with someone who might need this message. Subscribe to join our community of people committed to authentic healing and growth. And stay tuned for the next video, where we'll explore practical ways to begin this journey of integration. Thank you for your courage in staying with me until the end. Until next time, remember what Jung taught us. Your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Your pain isn't your enemy. It's the gateway to the wholeness you've been seeking all along.